Hey everybody, welcome to today's show. We're going to have Sylvain Bergeron from Bernina, USA. He's going to show us some really neat stuff about Berninas today. And then we're going to talk good, better, best with rotary cutters, and we're going to follow up with our lesson about 1/4-inch seams. Hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. So here we are with QITV, and we are featuring Sylvain Bergeron from Bernina, USA, and he's going to show us all about the new cool features on the 790 Plus, which is a really nice Bernina.
Well, hello and welcome. So today I'm going to go over the features of a modern sewing machine, and that varies by brand and model, but some of the things are pretty common, and some of the things are particular to Bernina. Now, Bernina machines have some specific features that are unique that make your sewing easier. And precision and performance are key to the brand, to the design, to the engineering. But also there's a notion called sewing comfort. And when I first read that, I was a bit puzzled. And I've learned over the years what it really means.
So I'm going to have you step back just a little bit. So when you talked about precision, that's important. I don't think a lot of people think about their sewing machines in terms of precision. So if you're talking about an entry-level sewing machine and you're talking about, say, this machine, when you say precision, what am I going to see is the difference?
Yeah, on a lot of products, a lot of brands, the entry-level, the baby sewing machine, for instance, is not the same quality or grade of materials or precision as the top of the lines, right? There's a range. On a Bernina, the entry-level, the very entry-level machine has the same material for the feed dogs, the same engineering that went into it. So if you sew a straight stitch, which is most of your sewing, on anything, it behaves and performs the same way. You only add features as you go up. You never take as you go down the line. So the precision, think Swiss watches. It's a Swiss company. They take the same approach. You have the precision in every mechanism that they make, and the materials chosen are the top quality to make sure that you get that precision and that performance.
So the entry-level Bernina's got the same foot, you're saying?
Well, the same system, yeah.
Throat plate, and it works the same way.
Yes.
And what result is that going to get you any differently from, say, an entry-level from Walmart? Okay.
Again, the feed dog, which is what feeds your fabric, makes you sew, that would be the same materials, processed the same way, so they grip the same way, and they have the best grip on the market. They really grip.
So it'll feed better.
Yes.
You'll see it. So when you're working with thicker fabrics,
exactly.
It'll pull better.
I did a little video recently, one of those little tasty type videos, and we did 12 layers of the super thick, heavy, rough denim.
Right.
And the little baby 215 that we just retired, that was an entry-level Bernina. It sewed through it like it was butter.
Okay.
All you have to do when you go thicker is you lengthen your stitch.
So that's a big difference.
The seam, right? Now the key also with the Bernina is the foot system.
Okay.
Like our presser feet are one piece. They come off like this. So when you put it on, you just hold it up against the cone, you position it, hold it up, and then clamp it down. That's it. So when you find the spot, hold it up, clamp it down, and then this machine, when you go midline and up, you get dual feed, which we'll talk about it later. Dual feed will add even traction from the top. So the feed dog, the foot, and the extra traction all integrate into one precise mechanism, so that when you sew, if I just run a bit of fabric through this, when you sew, and notice, I did not have to bring the foot down.
Yeah.
On the mid and upper line, it will actually bring the foot down. And when I'm done, I can use the built-in cutter, and it will lift the foot, and my project is done. All I have is my tiny little tail on the bottom here.
Right.
So that makes your sewing faster, easier, so that your focus stays on the project.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the stitch, because I know Bernina talks about stitch control a lot.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
I joke at the office that my colleagues are all control freaks, because the expression we use is total stitch control, which means you control your stitch. On the front of the machine, I have needle position buttons. I can move my straight stitch to edge stitch on a garment, on a border, on a sashing, anything. I can move my needle in various positions, the straight stitch, and pretty much every other stitch in the machine. So when you do applique, you don't have to reposition your applique a certain place. You can move it to the edge of the foot, the toe, and move the stitch over instead. So you control the stitch it does not tell you what to do. It does not control the game.
Okay.
So, and that's available for just about every stitch in the machine.
Okay.
And it's available even on the smaller machines. It's just that, there are more stitches on a big machine like this.
I believe there's 11 positions, aren't there?
There are 11 positions on the larger machines. Yeah. The smaller ones had 9. And that's enough to get the right spot just about every project. Yeah.
Cool.
So another thing I didn't mention is that, I mentioned the feed dog, the foot. The stitch plate is on a Bernina is super easy to remove, right? You just pop the back and then it comes right off. They're hard metal, and they have all the markings that you need to do your work. We basically have 3 types of plates. We have a regular plate that's for zigzag, right? And if your machine is a narrow zigzag versus a super wide zigzag like this one, 9 millimeters, it will be the plate that matches that. This is the wide one, so it can use a plate that's middle distance if you want, a narrower zigzag, 5.5, almost a 1/4 inch, because when you do things like blind hems and all that, you don't need the big zigzag. When you piece cotton, when you sew a regular straight stitch, there's a straight stitch plate. That's the ticket. That controls and protects the fabric from the puncture of the needle, so you get a perfect stitch every time.
So because I'm a curious kind of a gal, I spend a lot of time out cruising chat rooms. And there's a lot of feedback from a lot of different people about the difference in the stitch quality between a 9 millimeter and a 5.5 millimeter machine. There's a lot of ladies that say they can't get a straight stitch on a 9 millimeter machine.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you do differently on a 9 millimeter than on a 5 millimeter?
If I'm sewing plain cotton, piecing a quilt, I used to do garments. When I pieced a garment, anything like that, if I'm doing a straight stitch, I don't need a big wide stitch opening. I use the straight stitch plate because that controls the fabric around the needle and everything stays aligned. There's no room for that thread to wiggle around underneath because there's no big opening.
Right.
The big opening is necessary on one plate and it comes with the machine to allow the zigzag, the decorative stitches and all that. That's when you want to use it. But otherwise, you don't need that big opening. You don't want to use it. So it will. And another benefit is that if you have the straight stitch plate, the hole was only the width of the stitch, basically.
Right.
So when you piece, like for quilts, you want precision at a 1/4 inch. It protects. It supports the fabric right around, so there's no caving in. The fabric will. Some people would say that the big opening in the machine will eat the fabric. It will go down.
Right.
Yes, if you have a big pothole, your car wheel will fit inside that.
Yes,
pothole,
it will.
Right. So you just change the plate. Now this is a machine that comes with an embroidery module included, so it includes a straight stitch plate already. Some of them do. If they don't include it by default, it's available as an accessory. Always, if you go to a factory where they made your garments that you're wearing, your pants, anything, even shoes, they're using straight stitch plates.
Of course, yeah.
When they do a straight stitch, they don't bother with that. So you have all the options. Use the best one for the result. Now on the blog on we have articles on the stitch plates, that the benefits of each and when to use what.
And of course, that you went really fast on that. So that's
wealsew.com. One word, wealsew.com. Yeah.
Okay. And what would they find there?
There's projects, tutorials, background articles on the presser foot system, on the stitch plates.
Okay.
So it's kind of almost a mini Bernina Academy on continuing education, but also there's a lot of creative projects. From even bloggers who are not from Bernina.
So are they kind of like skill builder kind of thing?
Yes.
Is it okay?
And some of them are just inspirational. That some of that is like Pinterest with instructions.
Perfect. So we need to, wealsew.com. We need to be wealsew.com.
Yeah.
Okay. Now tell me about, here's one other thing that I see a lot on some of these chat spaces is a lot of ladies are saying they really struggle getting that perfect 1/4 inch seam on a 9 millimeter machine.
Okay. The first ingredient, as we said, is the straight stitch plate.
Right.
Now, there are, on these machines, for instance, most 9 millimeter machines, some of them you can tell them what foot is on the machine, right? So it will restrict, if you have a straight stitch foot, it will restrict. So if I had on the machine, for instance, the 97D foot, and the nice thing I discovered early on with the Bernina, at first when I saw that there were back then over 60 presser feet, I thought, whoa, do I have to buy all of these, right?
Yeah.
No, you only need to get the ones you need for your techniques. But the beauty of that is that every foot gives you the perfect execution of that technique. Because I learned one thing, it's very humbling. At the sewing point, where the needle goes into the fabric, it is not my lovely hands that guide the fabric, that govern the fabric.
Right.
It's the presser foot.
Right.
So it's important to have the right foot. So I have a 1/4 inch foot here with the, even with the dual feed, which means when I cross seams, when I cross piece, they will not try to pull away from each other. They will be fed from both top and bottom, so they stay together. So I get more accurate pacing.
So, but I think
that
that's
way.
important right there, what you just said. So if you are using the 97 foot on a 9mm machine, you need to be using the D foot with the dual feed.
Yes, exactly.
Because you won't get that good result if you don't, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So here I'm going to tell the machine what foot I have put on. And when I do this, now for the 1/4 inch, there are two ways to get what you just asked basically is how do I get a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, right? Because when you take a seam, where the stitches go in, it kind of eats into the fabric a little bit when you press it open, right? Otherwise, you'd be seeing those stitches on the top, right? So two ways to do this. Here, I can move, this will not let me move the needle position because I have the straight stitch plate on, right?
Correct.
So the other one is, and I learned this from, I nicknamed Nina, my colleague. Nina McVeigh is our quilting expert. I call her the Oracle of Wisconsin.
Okay.
She knows quilting, regular, long arm, everything. And what she said is the 1/4 inch marking that is right in front here. What I do on my plates, I use the fine point permanent markers, like little Sharpies, but the fine point ones, I colorize the 1/4 inch marking in red. It's critical, right?
So you can
the
see
1/2 inch I put in blue, the 5/8 I do in green. That way, I don't have to look for the markings, they come at me.
Okay.
So what she says is all you have to do, and it's the easiest thing, it's free. Normally we want the edge of the fabric on the groove, which it kind of it obfuscates the groove a little bit. You can't see it anymore. No, she says, you just want to see the full groove.
Okay.
That's it. And that's it, and it does work. I tested it, it does work. Now,
Okay.
on my quilts, I use 1/2 inch seam allowances because they're embroidered quilts, right?
Right.
So with the extra weight, I will use the 1/2 inch. That way the whole feed dog, which is bigger, gives me that full traction. If I wanted to trim on a recent quilt, the one you saw with the photo quilt, I had to trim the seam allowances because it was too much underneath. Then I went with my applique scissors and I could trim back if I wanted to. But those are embroidered quilts. They're heavy. A regular quilt like this, you just want to see the groove itself. And if it's red, it pops right at, it pops right there. You don't have to work
just a regular Sharpie marker.
Yeah.
Okay.
That works very well.
Good
now,
tip.
if you had the 5.5 millimeter plate here, it still supports the 1/4 inch because it's only about 3 millimeters, like 1/8 of an inch on each side. So it still supports the fabric at the raw edge.
Okay.
So that would be, and then you could move the needle position maybe one over. That gives you that scant. Now you would go on the groove for the 1/4 inch, not shy of the groove, right?
Okay.
So I like Nina's trick. It's the simplest thing in the world. It works every time.
Okay.
Just make sure you can actually see the marking for the 1/4 inch.
Okay. And well, that was an important tip there too, because I have also noticed some people looking for machines, this current pandemic situation we're in. Oh, everybody's getting machines now. And there were some people looking for machines that had that 1/4 inch marking on the machine already. And of course, it's right there.
Yeah. And on a Bernina, if you're piecing, let's say on your table, a lot of people are still working from a dining room table or,
sure.
When you put the extension table that comes with these machines, when you put them on, the 1/4 inch groove is all the way
down
on the table. So you see it from here, from the edge of the table all the way into the
So you
front.
could line up your border
You can
or
keep things lined up.
binding or whatever you're putting on
It's
long
very
range.
useful that way. So either way, you'll get it. Now, we've turned off the lighting here because of the cameras. I'm going to bring it up just for a sec so it will flash a little bit. Video cameras don't like bright LED lighting, right? Because it throws them. But for me, I'm over 50. I have no problem with that. But I read an article not long ago that says by age 50, your eyes let in 20% less light than they did at age 20. And I can vouch for that.
Okay.
So when you put the light on the machine on, you get this. You have a set of LEDs here so that your hand, you can tell from the hand that it's well lit. So if your project, like a bag or whatever is there, you can see everything that's going on. And we have surround LEDs here so that you don't get shadows while you sew.
Nice.
So that makes for a very good lit area. And it is dimmable. You can go brighter or a little dimmer. Because I did stitch in a ditch on a black fabric background quilt.
Glare.
Black fabric is lethal for your eyes. After 10 minutes, your eyes are bugging out, right? So with the dimmed light, I could now do the stitch in the ditch and not have to do this all the time, not blink like crazy. And then whoops, you miss a stitch and you deviate a little bit. So that was very useful. I'm going to turn it off just because for the camera that's more useful, but at home it's already on. And it is so bright. I woke up at 1 a.m. a few months ago, and you wake up and you realize, oh, I left the light on in the sewing room. Oh no. And now that I know it's on, it's going to bug me. I won't be able to go back to sleep, right? If you've been a parent, you're used to tracking the house. So I get up, I go to the sewing room, I walk in, the light wasn't on. The machine was on.
Oh.
It was so bright that the light was beaming out of the room, and I thought the light was on in the room. So I put the machine, we have an echo mode that will quiet down the machine, power down the lights. It cannot run, the dog cannot run the machine right now. And even if you left the needle down into a project, you had to go pick up the grandkids, whatever, you have to go run an errand, you can leave the project right there. And when you come back, the machine will wake up.
Right where you left it.
And you're ready to resume where you left it. You can leave it on for days.
Cool.
Right? Yeah. So that is for the basic stuff. Now, one thing you're not seeing from this side of the machine next to me is the freehand system. And it's a knee lift. We used to call it the knee lifter.
Knee lift, yeah.
What it does several things. When I'm ready to insert a project, especially I used to do garments, so I would do edge stitching, top stitching, like on your collar, right? You need to position just so. If you have to do the foot at the back here, one hand leaves the project.
Right.
It could wiggle out of the way. Here, everything stays because my hands will stay on the project. My eyes and my hands, which are, your brain is wired to that, right?
Right.
Will stay focused. And then when I position this, I let it down. I am ready to start sewing. Notice I put echo mode, it's initializing, and I can sew. When I'm done, if I need to pivot a corner, my foot control teams up with this. My foot control is a heel on where the heel is, on the back of the foot control. If I press down with the heel, it sinks the needle, or this one has been programmed to cut.
Sorry.
This is a quilting store. This is not my machine.
Yeah.
But normally the default is that it just goes down and it goes into the fabric. So that's the default. But you can program it, which is nice.
We're chain piecing in here.
There you go. So if you're a chain piecer, you can have that as a commercial machine would do, where you tap the heel, it cuts, lifts the foot. Next one.
Well, and the other cool thing for
chain piecing, right?
us quilters is the hover function.
Yes, there's a hover. So by default, the machine will hover when you stop sewing. It would actually, if the needle is down, if the needle stops down, which is a little touch on the screen here, the foot lifts so you could pivot when you do that kind of work. I grew up before the hover. So and you can turn it off. I drive a stick. I like manual. That's a bias, right? And it's not like it's not that you cannot teach the old dog a trick, but for me, this is my hover.
Yeah.
So whichever way your brain works, pick the one, it works for you.
I do have to say that when I'm chain piecing, I will sit in front of the machine and I'll have one stack of one piece and one stack of the other piece on both legs. So it's not like I can use my knee because I'm going like this.
Oh, okay. So, there's another thing. If you're a chain piecer, just a little tease here, there is a function in there on most of the most machines since 1997. In the
quilting stitches?
You can actually record the length of that first seam. And then when you finish, present the next one, it will sew, it remembers how long that seam needs to go, and you can just chain piece like a factory machine if you want. So you can go to town and just chain piece, like when you have to get down and get going and you really do the mass piecing, you can actually get it done faster. Now, I mentioned there was a thread cutter, of course. And even if your foot was up and down, you can drop it with the freehand system or with the button. Whichever your brain prefers is the right way. That's what I like. There's usually 3 ways to do everything.
Yes.
But I always tell my students, you pick the one that works for you.
And people don't know that. So to change your stitch width, you can do it on the screen.
Yes.
You can do it with the knob.
Yeah, with the knobs. And the nice thing, now I have a straight stitch foot here for piecing, so it won't change, but we have knobs. And I always tell people, my son, when he was like 12 months old, was just barely standing up. He knew how to crank the air filter knob, the speed knob. He knew how to play with it. You don't need to learn this. It's called analog, right? So we have knobs on almost all the machines other than the entry level, because it lets you, while you're sewing, you can change, for instance, my stitch length. I can do this while I'm sewing until I like it. Now we'll have to rethread because I lost my thread here. I've been playing with the cutter a couple of times too many. So I am going to rethread, which, as you can see, on Bernina's, there's no flip top. Everything is outside.
Right.
So all you do is line up your thread, and when you let go of the freehand system, it drops the foot. There's now tension on my thread. I can now thread with one hand. So when I finish this, there's a built-in needle threader, and it does a big loop that goes all the way to the back. I'm old school like this. I always verify my thread is in my hand and cut it, and Bernina's hold their thread.
Yeah.
That's nice, so I can start sewing and it will hold my thread for me. So the freehand system, one more thing. When I've sewn something, when I'm done, okay, even if I use the cutter, in the old days, I'm gonna finish this like in the old days, you would have gone here and lifted this at the back. Okay?
Right.
I'm gonna fake that. I'm gonna lift the foot, and then I would go and cut my threads. The feed dogs would stay up. Now you're piecing a fancy star, something that feathers into a lot of points. And if you need to turn around, you're doing work and you turn around, you have a lot of seam allowances. When you do this, and if your feed dogs are up, the teeth are scraping those seam allowances and flipping them up.
Right.
And you sew your merry way. You've done this before. You know what you're doing. And then you pick it up and you go like, how did that happen? Because when you pivot, it will scrape against the teeth.
Right.
So it will flip your seam allowances. When I sew, I'm going to sew without thread for just a bit. So when you're done sewing normally, on the old machines, you have this bracket at the back here that would lift the foot. I'm going to fake it here and lift the foot by hand. When you pull the fabric off, the feed teeth would still be up. Now, with the freehand system, when I'm done, when I press the knee bar, it will automatically drop the feed teeth as it raises the foot. This way, I have a free passage for my project and nothing will scrape against the bottom of my fabric. And there's one more thing. If the foot is parked up and you're doing a heavy work, okay? I was helping somebody fix a horse pad that goes under the saddle, right? It was like cushy, but thick.
Right.
So, and these bigger machines have more clearance here. The smaller machines will have less clearance. But when you go there, if you needed the extra lift, if you push on the knee bar, it will go extra actually, especially on the smaller machines, it will go 2 millimeters extra high.
Okay.
So I'll give you more, and then that goes down. Now on the big machines, there's new conveniences available. As I said before, when I start sewing, I position this, let's say 1/4 inch, right? And when I'm ready to start, it drops the foot for me. I don't have to do that anymore. So all these little manipulations that we used to do are gone. So now it's my eyes, my hand, my fabric. That is 100% sewing.
It's a lot less work.
Yeah. And on the foot control, Bernina foot control, if you remember those secretaries' foot rests, like the slanted foot pads that secretaries can use, so they can, when they type a lot, they could rest. It's really good for you. So this one is built that way.
Oh, is it?
You put your whole foot on the foot control, and then when you sew, you're not pressing down, squeezing down with your toes. When you do that, you feel the tension build up your leg. After 4 hours, your lower back is hurting. This, you're rocking your foot forward. It's at your ankle, it just pivots. That's it, no stress. You can sew for 6 hours, there's no strain on your back. As long as you have a good chair, you're good to go. So you just go like this, and if you want to go 1 stitch at a time, you can do this, because you're rocking your foot. And then you have the heel function, and the heel function normally just sends the needle down if you want to, or as we did here, you can program it where it will cut, then it lifts the foot, next one in, next one in. So it's all about productivity. So sewing comfort means taking all these little non-sewing, non-active sewing operations, which become nuisances, especially once you know that you could sew without those. You could sew with all that stuff taken care of for you.
That's back in the day. I can remember working with a very, very, very old singer.
Yeah, these conveniences are not just like fancy features. They're at your side while you sew every seam you take. So you focus on your project, So you're not as tired, you get more done, and the quality of your results improves because you are focused on your project.
And everybody wants better quality.
Yep.
So I see you're holding something there that I think a lot of people might like to see.
Yes. So this is the class 15 bobbin, the standard bobbin. And Bernina bobbins have a gripper core, so when you wind, you don't never have to go through the little holes, right? You just wind around it 3 times and then you send it on its way. So that's your standard bobbin. This is actually all Berninas today, but except for the 3 series, the entry level, and those are slightly smaller. They're great for taking to class and to travel, right? They have jumbo bobbins, and jumbo bobbins have 70% more thread. So you sew a lot longer. I recently had to finish a project on a machine that uses these bobbins, and I was like, "What do you mean you're hungry?" You get used to this. These
You really do.
And then you see these reflectors that tells the machine that there is thread down there, that it's still turning, and so the machine will know when the bobbin thread runs out or breaks, because that can happen once in a while. So the machine will know and will let you know, stop sewing and all that.
That in itself is worth its weight in gold. I'm
Oh
just
yes,
saying.
yeah. You keep sewing. And
Just
remember,
saying.
this is one of the biggies, literally, that you keep focus on your project, because you're not rewinding bobbins all the time.
Okay.
And then the bobbins, these only go in one way. You cannot put them the wrong way. You can wind the bobbin while you sew.
Perfect.
And then when you're done, you cut your threads here, you put in the bobbin case, put it down there, you cut the thread down there. You get sewing without using scissors.
And without taking your project off, because what you didn't mention is that the bobbin is a front load.
Exactly. It's in the front near me, so I can change bobbin without changing anything up here.
In the middle of your embroidery project, when your bobbin warning comes out, you're like, oh man.
So that's for the bobbins.
Okay.
And you know what? I will. One thing I get a lot, the question I get a lot is, I've mentioned the dual feed, right?
Right.
And people say, well, if it has dual feed, do I need a walking foot? The answer is yes.
Okay.
95% of the time, this is enough.
Okay.
When I do a self-binding on a quilt, the quilt weighs 18 pounds.
Sure.
I need more traction than that, so I'll use the walking foot. So my little recipe is, the dual feed is 5 times the convenience. The walking foot is 5 times the performance. It's about 5 times the surface area from the top controlling. The walking foot grips the fabric before the needle.
Well, it has 2 little feet that come down.
And they reach to for the fabric before the needle, before the stitch point, through the stitch point, and after. So it controls everything.
Right.
So the only thing it doesn't like to do is go around curves, right? So for curves, you use the freehand system and you pivot.
Right.
So that's it. So yeah, it's all really, really good, precise technology. And the result is better sewing, faster sewing, and better results.
Okay. So what I would recommend that you do, if you've had your curiosity piqued, is to stop into your local dealer, of course, Quilting in the Valley being one of them, and check out some of these machines. You don't have to start with one of these top-of-the-line machines, although it's a beautiful machine. You don't have to start at the top of the line to get the features and the functions. These are beautiful machines all the way through the line, and they add functionality as you go up the line. So come in and see the machine that meets your needs. Maybe you don't need everything this one offers. Maybe you need the one that 2 models down offers. Who knows? Come in and check them out, ask some questions, test drive it. You will be amazed. And Sylvain won't be here to tell you about it, but I think you can recommend.
Yes, from the 5 series up, you get pretty much all of the key features, the dual feed and all that, touchscreen. There's even a safety program when you tell the machine, you've got a straight stitch plate on, it will refuse to move the needle over, so you can't break the needle that way anymore.
Right.
So from the midline up, you get all of this. And all the way down, now we have the same jumbo bobbins, like all the way to the 4 series. So regardless, you get the key features across the line. So I call mine serious tools. And serious toys, because I have fun sewing. It's a pleasure. It's a zen. I love sewing. So having the right machine is everything. You can fight with the machine, or it can support your project. It's the way I look at it.
If it's a chore, it's not fun. All right. Well, thank you for showing us this. We appreciate it. Come on in and check them out. Quilting in the Valley. Hey, welcome to Good, Better, Best. We are going to talk rotary cutters today. So I have 3 rotary cutters, and there's a lot of rotary cutters on the market. Before I even get started, this is not the end-all be-all for rotary cutters, but I'm going to tell you about these particular 3 and the functions and features of these 3 that I like. So this is our Good. This is a fairly low-cost rotary cutter to get into the system with. The system, like quilting is a system. It is to me. Anyway, so we're getting into the system, by golly, with this one. This is a relatively, like I said, low-cost entry-level rotary cutter. It has an automatic safety. So you see this green thing here? That automatically bumps back to protect that blade so you're not going to cut yourself. So you don't have to remember to shut your blade every time you put this down. That is a plus as far as I'm concerned. This is also left-handed or right-handed. Depends on which hand you hold it in as to which way this goes. And it's easy to use. I mean, you just put it down and push and off you go. And it needs a new blade, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. But anyway, so that's easy peasy. You push, the blade comes out, you let go, the blade is covered. That's our Good. This is our better. And you might ask me why I don't have this as best, because this is the most expensive item on the table. This is over $50. This is from Quilter Select. That's Alex Anderson's brand. And it is really hefty. It is really hefty, solid feel in your hand. You push the button like this, and you push off the guard. So that's this thing. So when I push the button and push down, the blade comes out. So the guard is off, and then you line up and you do your cutting. And when you're done at the other end, you go like that to tap the guard back on. That's the part I don't like, that you have to tap the guard back on. Cutting-wise, it handles real well. It has a lot of heft to it, and you can get a lot of cutting done. You can leave it open without shutting it. That's the part I don't like. You got to tip it to shut the guard. It's a really nice cutter, but it's not, I don't feel, as safe as some of the others. You have to remember to shut it. This is my best. This is from Olfa. That's the ergonomic cutter from Olfa. It is trigger. So the blade is automatically in safe mode until you trigger out. The handle is slightly curved, and I like the angle of this particular one for when I'm cutting. The angle feels right to my wrist. So because this is angled, I don't have to alter how I hold my wrist to use it. So there you go. It's easy. As soon as I let go of the handle, it's out. So good. This is the OmniGrid. It's a great one to get started with. It's safe. The blade is always going to be covered. As soon as you let the pressure off of it, your blade is covered. Better. Cuts really well, lots of heft. The Quilter Select model, you do have to remember to put the safety on. And best, the Olfa ergonomic. I love the handle shape, and I love the safety with that popping back in every time you use it. I do want to finish off with one thing. This is not a good, better, best. This is a just give it up, get this. So this is a new thing on the market in the last year. This is the endurance blade from Olfa. If you've ever gotten a new blade out and cut for, I don't know, 4 or 5 days and been like, holy cow, I got to replace the blade again. And we do that here in the quilt shop. We cut a lot. Olfa sent out free samples of these endurance blades to get us to try them. They're kind of expensive. So I was like, I don't know. I put it on my fabric cutting counter. We used it for a week before it got dull. We use these on my cutting counters. And I will tell you, a week doesn't sound long to you guys, but to us, we had to change our blades every 2 to 3 days. So for it to last 5 to 6 days here at a quilt shop, phenomenal. So nothing like it on the market. There is no good, better, best on this. This is the best you can get. Olfa Endurance Blade. Try it. You'll like it. That's it for today's Good, Better, Best. Everybody, it's time for our lesson for today. We're going to talk about the 1/4-inch seam. So there's been a lot of debate back and forth about 1/4-inch seams, and here's what I would say to you is you need to test. So whether you need a scant 1/4-inch seam or a full 1/4-inch seam really depends on what needle you're using, how it distorts your fabric, what thread you're using, how it distorts your fabric, how accurately you cut, and how accurately you press, as well as your seams themselves. So let's assume you started out with an accurately cut piece. So let's say you've got 2 2.5-inch strips. If you sew those together, you should then have 1 4.5-inch wide piece, because you're going to lose a 1/4 inch on your 2 pieces, right? So test that way. Get yourself a couple of rectangles, 2 2.5-inch by whatever rectangles, sew them together with whatever method you use to get your 1/4-inch seam, press them out. And when I say press, I don't mean iron, I mean press. And then measure, are you at a 4.5-inch width piece with your 2 2.5-inch strips? If you are, you've got your 1/4-inch seam. If you're not, then we need to kind of troubleshoot what's causing that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're using a 1/4-inch foot. Now, I had a gal tell me once that she bought a 1/4-inch foot, she used it once, but she broke a needle as soon as she went to a zigzag, so she's never used it again. No. You just need to remember to replace your foot before you go to the zigzag. So if you have a Bernina, it will not let you zigzag and break a needle. because you go to do a zigzag with your 1/4 inch foot. It won't let you do it. I'm sure there are other machines on the market that do the same. You really want to try to get a 1/4 inch foot for your piecing. It really makes your life so much more easy when you're quilting. So this is the 1/4 inch foot that Bernina uses with the 9mm machines, which this one is. So this particular one is the 97D, and the D means it's for the dual feed to come through and feed your fabric evenly along your feed dogs. So it's a 1/4 inch from your needle to this outside edge right here. And it's a 1/4 inch from your needle to the inside of this other tongue, which is kind of cool because if you need to piece on the other side of something or edge stitch or whatever, you can use this guide to do it on the other side, not just the main side we usually use. So this is the 1/4 inch foot for this particular machine. A lot of people like to use a 1/4 inch foot with a guide. That's what this is. So this is a 1/4 inch foot, and this piece right here is the fabric guide. So you would use this piece right here to run the edge of your fabric under as you're piecing. I used to piece almost exclusively with a foot with a guide. It was on another brand. That other brand 1/4 inch foot, I will tell you, was not a 1/4 inch. The other brand, their 1/4 inch foot, they were figuring metrics. So when you went to do your measuring, you were way off of a 1/4 of an inch. So if you've got one of those other brands that haven't quite figured out a 1/4 inch is like American 1/4 inch stuff, do some testing with their 1/4 inch feet, do some measuring. You may have to adjust your needle position even with their 1/4 inch foot. But anyway, I used to use the one with the guide, and what I found was I was sliding my fabric so hard up against that guide because I was so concerned that I would not have the fabric touching that guide at all the time that I pushed fabric up into it, and I had bigger than a 1/4 inch seam. When I got rid of that and started working with this one, I just aim to make sure that my fabric is even with this end. Once I started working with this one, I got more accurate. That may not be the case for you. Test it out and try. Some of the other things that you can try with your 1/4 inch foot that you have is this little dude. This is a sewing machine seam gauge. The sewing machine seam gauge, we carry them all the time. Bonnie Hunter loves these. So if I put this right underneath there, there's a hole. I'm going to lower my needle right through that hole, and you'll see that this Bernina 1/4 inch foot is exactly where that 1/4 inch seam line should be. That's exactly right. So this is a great way to figure out where your 1/4 inch should be. The other thing that you can use is these seam guides from Guidelines for Quilting. These come in a packet, and they have an adhesive back. And what you do is you take the adhesive back off. I believe Gypsy Quilter makes these as well. You take that adhesive back off, and once you get that gauge underneath there, you figure where the 1/4 inch is. You slide that on there, and then voila, you've got yourself a guide to run your fabric up against. So easy peasy. Get your 1/4 inch seam correct. They make a 1/4 inch foot for every machine on the market. They are not difficult to find. There's even some generic ones that you can get for some older machines. We carry a few of them, like older Singers and Kenmores and whatnot. So you can get a 1/4 inch foot even for a featherweight. So get yourself a 1/4 inch foot. Make your piecing so much more accurate. When you go to make one of these things and you're cutting all these different sizes of pieces to get those seam intersections to match up where you want them to, that 1/4 inch seam has got to be right. Okay, that's our lesson for today. Test them out, get them right, make your life easy. See you next time. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's show. We've got more stuff coming for you next time, more guests, more fun things, more lessons. So I hope you join us next time as well. Keep sewing.